have it. It's
Sometimes we still do when we listen to 90s music.
Oh, the old stuff.
Yeah, classic.
Thankfully, IT is here.
It's amazing.
Was this planned?
Media community, if you can hear me, we don't have a TV on in here, so I don't know if we're live yet or not.
I'm sure they tried.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
We found the on button, and I think we're on. We're live.
Finance people.
Yeah, we got tech here. All right.
The big bucks.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is John Lohr. I'm the chair of the Millis Finance Committee. And before we get going, I'd like to have everyone introduce themselves, starting with my left. Sarah?
Pete Berube,
Joyce Boyardi.
Mike Crone.
Kathy McInnes.
Jody Garson.
Thank you, everyone. And just a reminder to everyone here, but everyone who's watching, that you can get all this material online on the Millis website, as well as it's live now, and you can watch it on demand later on YouTube. So feel free and do that. Before we jump into the different departments, I just wanted to address one thing regarding the microphones. So last meeting, as you can see, I'm very close here now. We want to make sure that we can speak into the microphone so it's the mic can actually pick it up for the video aspect of it. And if our guests, if they could just properly speak into the microphone, that would be great as well. On another note, Kathy made a great point of asking questions through the chair. I think that's a great point. Let's keep the structure of the committee, keep it intact. Jen chimed in asking if it was archaic and inefficient, which to a degree it is, but we'll go with structure and we'll go with protocol for now. So I appreciate everyone's assistance and help on that. Does anyone have any questions on any of those housekeeping items before we get going? None. All right, I think we're gonna start off with animal control.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, I'm Erin Millette. I think I've met all of you. Pretty sure, yes.
In a formal setting, not in a dog setting,
Yeah.
animal setting.
That's good, we like that.
My dog has a license and I obey all the leash laws,
That's
just for the
good.
record.
That's good.
Okay, good.
It's not good if the animal control officer's been to your house.
Yeah,
No.
or if I know you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Okay, so I guess I'll let you guys start. I think you guys had some questions for me.
Usually when we have questions, it's usually from me.
Yeah.
So we do. So just to help facilitate conversation, obviously we have your narratives and your different forms. So I mean, if you want to start off, that's fine. The questions are just more kind of areas. One personally that I thought was interesting, such as the first question, I asked, actually, is there much animal cruelty in the area? But if you want to start off, please do.
So actually, since I've been animal control officer, we have not had any cases of animal cruelty. We don't have much in the sense, like some other areas do. We do get calls, from residents of what they suspect could be possible animal cruelty, but we do investigate those calls, and a lot of it's just education of what people might think is and what is the law and, things like that. So to answer the question, no, we do not have a lot of animal cruelty in this area, but I do try to educate the public as much as I can and answer all those types of questions for people, that have those types of issues.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Mike.
With more of the coyote population showing up, and even bear sightings recently, have you had to deal with much of that? Has that been increased, or has that increased your time over the past few years?
Not so much with the bears. I haven't seen any in Millis or Medway. The coyotes, however, I've had more interactions with dogs. No human activity, but with dogs I have had an intake an uptake, I should say, in dog bites in the fall with coyotes.
The coyotes attacking dogs?
Yeah, and that was all unattended animals.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joyce.
What, you deal with the wildlife as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so are you seeing an increase of wildlife deaths due to rodents being poisoned by poisons versus being trapped?
Yes.
Could you speak on that?
Sure. Secondary anticoagulant rodenticide poisoning not only affects the rodents that are poisoned, they eat the bait, they leave. They don't just stay like in your house or the buildings where the bait is placed. And then when they come out into the population, our natural rodent control, your foxes, your owls, your hawks, your coyotes, all those types of animals that are natural predators for these things, eat them. And then if ingested enough, it builds up, it builds up, it builds up, and then it turns into rodenticide poisoning, which ideally they hemorrhage, so they bleed to death. So that's a big thing. And it's also, we found, we do have, like, I get a lot of calls about foxes with mange, and we found a correlation between rodenticide poisoning with mange, that the foxes can't fight off the mange because they don't have a healthy immune system. So it doesn't just affect the one animal.
I just saw about the eagle, that,
Oh, the hawk?
the hawk.
Yeah.
Sorry, the hawk that was trying to be saved and ended up dying because it was poisoned. So I'm seeing more and more of that, so I figured you're seeing
Yeah, there
more.
is a bill in the House now to actually ban that, so they're working on that. Yeah.
Could you talk about the shared responsibilities with Medway and how that functions?
Sure, as far as financial or just the
Both. Yeah,
day-to-day?
yeah. We can
So
stick
I
with the
believe
financials.
it's split 60/40 with Medway paying the 60% of it because the call volume is higher. So there's no real rhyme or reason to how I handle the calls. It's basically where I'm needed. Some days Millis is hopping and some days Medway's is hopping and some days both are, ringing off the hook. So it just all really depends on where I'm
Where the
needed.
action is?
Yeah, where the action is.
And are your assistants in Millis or are they in Medway?
They work for both the,
Same deal?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Go ahead, Pete.
So, hi, Aaron.
hi.
Your document here says that you were looking for funding for a part-time animal control officer, animal inspector, but I don't see that annotated in your FY '25 request. How much specifically?
Should have
It's
been.
there, part-time,
It's
it's
there.
there. Yeah, 10,400?
I don't see it as an increase. I see there's 12, I actually see it as a decrease. There's 12,185 part-time, adopted in '24. Is it not reflected in the
It's in the above
request?
service level.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Just for clarification.
Yep.
This is considered an above-level service request, so therefore it's not in the base budget that you see there. It's actually, I think, on Form 6 or 7, which is the above-level service request.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Form 6
certainly,
form.
the animal control officer could
Right.
discuss the specifics of it.
So forms, how much is it? Is it $300 weekly? Is that what we're looking, second block?
50, yeah.
$15 an hour at 20 hours, 300 weekly, 20,000.
I believe that's approximately the amount, and again, that's
Okay.
split with
Okay.
Medway.
Yep.
That would be one of the shared costs, and sure, the ACO could talk about the need for that. We did have some extended conversations internally and with the town officials in Medway about that, so I'll defer the specifics to the
And-
ACO.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, while Mr. Kaczynski's here, I'll just ask
Yeah,
one
go
quick
ahead.
question, and then please expand on it. The health insurance for 20 hours a week, is that considered qualified for health insurance?
It does, it
Okay.
does, and again, that's shared as well.
Okay. right.
You know, it's a difficult situation, and I think we're in a transition period. The growth in the call volume and in the need for these services is growing, and we do see those hours probably will increase more over the next several years. We also think with this particular position, it'd be very tough to attract a person without a benefit position because of the nature. It's like, it's evenings, 4 nights a week, and then they're, you know, on call and so forth. So it is difficult in today's climate to keep someone on that sort of schedule. And the pay level is fairly low.
If I may keep going.
You may.
I'm
Part
going
C.
to put you on the spot. Do you support this?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And generally, I don't support positions that are in the 20 to 30-hour range for that reason. And we did have, Aaron knows, we did have extensive conversations about that, as well as with the officials from Medway. But I think, again, this is a transitional period, and, you know, just as a heads up to the committee, I do expect to see, you know, the need and the hours to go up over time, but we think, at least for the next couple of years, those hours will be sufficient. So the pay level is rather low, but the draw for the potential employee is the benefits, there's no question.
So it's about a $36,000 increase.
That's correct.
Okay.
Assuming they take on you know, they accept the insurance, which is more likely than not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so if you would describe the need.
Yeah, so ideally, I'm one person, 24/7, covering 2 towns. So there's no coverage for me, unless I was to get mutual aid from another town to cover, but that doesn't give me any free time to do anything that I need to do. So having a part-time person, you know, to come in, especially like in the summertime hours, because the summertime comes, springtime comes, I'm going till 8, 9 o'clock at night. So, I mean, essentially, you'd be paying my overtime, so you could pay me overtime, or you could pay, you know, a part-time person salary. So I think, you know, part of that would kind of even out, but I'm also the animal inspector. So between the 2 towns is about 150 barn inspections that need to be done annually, along with the rabies quarantines. So that just alone for me is, so the part-time position would also, they would also be the animal inspector too, so that they could help with those duties.
Okay.
So that's really kind of it. I mean, to take a vacation, there's no one there to cover.
Help you out.
Yeah.
On that same note, so I understand the time commitment. Do you have any data, like number of calls or?
Oh, yeah, I log everything.
You do?
I
Okay.
send quarterly a report to the town administrator of my calls.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something that you'd be able to share with us?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, if
Yeah.
you could give it to me, that'd be fine.
Sure. And it's probably actually,
Deirdre,
yeah,
yeah.
it's in the annual report too. I'm sure you could get the calls, but I have that. I can
Okay.
share that with you, absolutely.
That'd be great, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Pete.
One more. I see your request for a vehicle, and I don't doubt it, 115,000 miles, and it sounds like you're on the, I mean, you're not in an office, you're on the
Right.
road. Would you just describe for us the condition of your vehicle, and where does it impact you the most right now?
So the condition, well, it's not set up as an animal control vehicle. Essentially, it's a pickup truck. So there's no caging to house dogs, so I have no protection to separate me and an animal to keep myself or the animal safe. And it's a pickup truck, but the way, you know, I'm picking up deceased deer and then keeping equipment back there. So I can't, if I was to pick up something large, there's no room, and you can't house live animals where dead animals have been. So that alone in itself is an issue. So it's more of a safety issue for me and the animals, as well as a storage issue of contamination between dead things and live things and things of that nature. So that's ideally where I'm finding the biggest impact is where to store things and how to handle dogs. Like if I was to get an aggressive dog, there's nowhere for me to put it safely.
Thank you very much. And just to confirm, it looks like your quote includes the outfitting of a vehicle with what you describe as necessary.
Right.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mike.
There's 2 vehicles in here.
Yeah, so we had discussed picking up, so part of my job is in Medway, I was picking up deer. And in Millis, the DPW does that. So that's something that we're working on. It depends if I was not to have to do that, then I could go with a smaller vehicle. But if not, then I'd
It
have,
would be one or the other of these vehicles?
Right.
Okay. So you're not looking for 2 vehicles, one or the
right,
other?
either or.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Sarah.
just wanted to confirm, and this will be split with Medway, so it would be 60/40 Medway also for the vehicle?
I don't know how that, I think it would be 50/50. That I'm not quite sure. I'd have to find that out.
Mike knows.
Oh, Mike knows.
I believe the vehicle is 50/50. That's the way it was split last time. I think it was about 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years
Yeah.
ago. Aaron's requesting that for the fall, so that, even though that's in your documentation, it's not being requested at the Springs Town meeting. That would be, it has been conveyed to the capital committee that that's being put forward for consideration at the fall town meeting.
So,
Go ahead, Sarah.
so will this also be voted on in Medway too, so it would depend upon if both towns approve it? in the
Yes, well, that's a great question. In speaking with the Medway officials, they have basically a capital fund that they approve for different items, and that's part of the reason why it's being delayed, is because they're looking to schedule that over the course of the next year. So yes, they would need to approve it as well. So, because we'd look to approve a portion of the funding, and then Medway would actually either be paying us back or funding it directly. So we're working that out with Medway.
So between now and falls, we hope to get more answers from Medway.
Yes, the Medway is committed to the purchase of the vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, the administration, the
Yeah.
Medway is.
Go ahead, Pete.
Sorry. Have you made a presentation to their finance committee, and has anybody there signaled support? I mean, it sounded like you-
The town administrator and his staff have all indicated their support for the vehicle, and that he'd be putting forward the necessary approvals starting next fiscal year to work on the capital approvals for that. But it didn't seem to be a problem in speaking with him.
I have a question
Okay,
on the dog license software.
yes.
Can you shed light on that, or is that more of a clerk department
So
discussion?
that is more of a town clerk, I can shed some light on it.
Okay.
And Jim can probably shed some more light on it too. I will start with, you had asked about Medway, what they use Citizen Serve.
Okay,
And I don't have my own login, they have given me one because that's also a finance issue of cost. So I don't change anything in there, I simply just go in and, access the information that I need. However, in Millis, not exactly what the name of the software is, Jim can probably speak to that, but I know it's web-based and that I'm on the Medway server. So what the town clerk usually does is send me like an Excel spreadsheet, and I can access it that way.
gotcha. Of all the different dogs and the license,
Right.
et cetera. Okay, that sounds, I just know that we have a new system.
Yeah, and like I said,
So-
Jim can probably speak more on that.
You can speak now. Might as well talk about dog license and software.
So the dog licensing software currently is an Access database housed on our servers. So especially with her being Medway, us being Millis, as you know, trying to talk from different entities to the other entities can be a little confusing. And then the cost of trying to give her access, similar to like Citizen Serve, where she doesn't have direct access to it. The cost of getting direct access over to Millis as well, there'd be a cost associated with that, with licensing and stuff for us. The current best method would be those spreadsheets. They can be done on a more regular basis, because we also talked about sharing those with the dispatch at police as well. We are, as I'll talk about on mine, we are talking about an e-permitting software for Millis, which maybe would include dog licensing, but that wouldn't be till later on, until it's actually implemented and we look further into it. So this would be the system, at least for the next 2, maybe 3 years, and then transitioning from there.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mike.
So if you get a call for an unruly animal, domestic animal, and you go to a house, do you have access at that time as to the vaccination status of that animal?
No.
And that's a safety issue, isn't it?
Not so much. I mean, we have protocols in place that if I was to be bitten, I would go get vaccinated, or, you know, after that, the dog would go on a 10-day quarantine. So there are rabies protocols, you know, that would be, I'm myself am rabies vaccinated. So, you know, any dog bite obviously is a risk, but that's not necessarily a concern right then and there at the moment noticing the status of the.
But if you found you go into an animal call, and the animal you've shown no vaccination, the animal's 6 years old, you haven't seen any vaccination, you'd be a little nervous about that, wouldn't you? I mean, my daughter's a veterinarian, so I talk to her about these things all the time.
It's, like I said, again, it's not my first
Thought.
Again, we would, at that point, again, too, if there was no vaccine, that's what that 10-day quarantine is for.
You're just thinking of your safety. That's
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, thank you.
Be nice to have
He's a
access.
caring guy.
Be nice to have access when you go to a house to know.
Yeah,
that an
to
animal
know,
is
but then
domestic
you
animal.
run into, are they licensed too? And then if they're not, then
So
we
so I have
wouldn't
a,
know.
let me just,
You go right ahead.
I have a question. So out of all the dogs that are in Medway and Millis, but Millis, do we have an idea of like how many dogs are registered? Not I think it's like 1,000 registered. But of all the dogs, like, are there 1,200 dogs out there? Like, do you think 80% of the dogs are registered? Or-
That I wouldn't know, to be honest. I'd have to
Yeah.
check with the town clerk
But
to see,
basically,
like,
okay, I was just
you know,
curious.
yeah, I wouldn't know right off the top of my head. I'd have to
Okay.
look to see.
Trends. Okay, go ahead, Joyce.
I just have a question as far as coverage, since you are a one-arm paper hanger and are called all the time. What happens when you are off duty? Who covers, does another dog officer or animal control in another town? Or do our police officers go to the aid of, say, a dog that's been hit and still alive, or a deer that's been hit, or?
So when I'm off, I have to have coverage, so usually I have Norfolk covering because I have a mutual aid agreement with them. After hours, or if it's like an emergency and I'm not right there, you know, the police are very good. They will go to the call, you know, as they're waiting for me to get on scene, but I always have coverage. There's never a time when this town doesn't have access to an animal control officer,
Okay,
ever.
okay, just,
It's reassuring, thank you.
thank you.
Very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions? Aaron, I appreciate you enlightening us on animal facts as well as financials, so we appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Jim, you have to make this equally as exciting as animals. I know we're talking about IT right now.
Yeah, I don't think that's most people's favorite subject, so. So, hello, I'm Jim Donovan, the IT director. My department is responsible for technology supporting services of all town employees, apart from the schools. In addition to all physical assets, the department oversees contractor-hosted computer services, coordinates and manages external technology vendors such as our help desk support, and Munis, things like that. Project initiatives for FY '25 include Azure and security improvements, so basically improving both of those postures or those systems. Cybersecurity training, which we received a grant for. E-permitting and fiber connectivity, which are both grant-funded for the implementation of them.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Just
Yep,
for the
certainly.
members, does everyone understand Azure and the platform that we all function off of for not only this, but for the town?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure if anyone had any questions. Thank you, go ahead.
Total proposed budget for FY '25 is roughly $387,000. It's consistent with preceding approved budgets. This is an increase of $31,000, reflecting a potential introduction of e-permitting, which is subject to approval from this board and then also obviously from town meeting. The adoption of an advanced level antivirus protection, which is called EDR. It's mandated by, or not mandated, but requested by our cybersecurity provider, insurance provider, Maya, and is also becoming the industry standard. There's also some other various software maintenance costs, whether it's Munis, assessor software, and things like that. Apart from these aspects. That's weird.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. All the other budget items have pretty much remained the same.
And for sorry to interrupt,
Yep, no.
for e-permitting, is that the building permits, or are we talking about other types of permits?
Yes, so both. So it starts out with building.
Yep.
So the initial ones will be building, fire,
Yep.
and town administrator's office.
Gotcha.
So those will be the three to start, and then from there, it will move on to Board of Health, possibly clerks for some of the, for like dog licensing, and then maybe even DPW at that point.
Perfect.
So any questions, I guess?
Just following the pages here.
Yep.
Can you just talk about cybersecurity and not only just what we have here in terms of the programs, but just threats in general to municipalities that are out there?
Threats are growing, and we've all seen the news stories. I get emails every day about it.
Okay.
So do many other members in the town. Even when you look at different places that have been hit, we recently had MGM casinos were hit with a pretty huge cybersecurity issue. CISA, which is the federal government's cybersecurity, they were hit last summer. Microsoft's high levels was hit as well. So this is something that even no matter how good you are, there's still a chance you will get hit. So the best thing you can do is keep preparing for it. So with that being said, some of that is that EDR software, which is basically higher level antivirus of getting that installed on our computers. Also some of the multi-factor authentication, which requires either text, phone calls, or an authenticator app on the phone, or possibly even a device that you carry with you, like a token or something like that that is carried with you. I also do some location-based blocking, where people aren't allowed to access any systems unless you're in a specific location. So, you know, carrying that forward is making sure that those things are in place and we're doing the best we can. Currently, for our multi-factor authentication, we're just using Microsoft's basically built-in authentication. Basically, that's not good enough in the real world, but we're not there yet. Number one, research to even find out what we would do beyond that, and then going from there. But again, cost and, you know, everything does cost different amounts of money for all these things. EDR, as I mentioned, is more money. There's another one above that, which is called MDR, which is managed antivirus, which is what the state is pushing for. Not requiring it all, but pushing us for. So all these things cost a little bit more money with different of the multi-factor types. So a lot of it is just figuring out what the cost of these is gonna be and where we get the best bang for the buck. Also the fiber grant, which I received, which I'm working on. Now that I'm full-time, I have more time to work on that. That also will help with cybersecurity of centralizing the town. Right now, each building is its own island. And then even with DPW, with our water and sewer system, are islands and they talk to each other instead of them being just direct connected to each other. So as soon as you're on the internet, as soon as you're out there, you're exposed. And that's just another point that has to be monitored and prevented from access. So centralizing things will help us a lot with that.
So on that point, what do we use for servers and what do we use for cloud?
Yep.
And is there migration towards the cloud to reduce the hardware risks and things like that?
Yes, so we are a little bit disjointed in terms of what building does what. Police is different than we are
Yep.
currently. But currently in Town Hall, about 5 to 7 years ago before me, we used to have on-premise servers, so physical servers in a server room like you'd expect. Those were basically all taken and what's called virtualized or moved to the cloud. So all the same basic servers, they were just Microsoft had them instead of us physically having them. We had about 8 servers at the time. We are currently in the process and just finishing up switching over to a more streamlined version and using some of Microsoft's other services. Instead of in the old system, we'd have a server for each different thing. Microsoft now takes care of that as a service for us. So there's no physical server or even virtual server that we have to maintain. So we went from 8 down to 3, and one of the 3 is actually a backup machine. So we've definitely reduced the amount of machines we're using in that, which is a cost reduction from maintenance, from Microsoft costs of hosting all those. Police, we're in the process of looking at what they're gonna need. Their servers are getting to end of life, so we'll be looking at whether it's cloud for them or not. And then for most people in the town hall, we use what's called the thin client, which is basically a dumb computer, a terminal that connects you to Microsoft, and that's all it does. So it's not really a full computer, and it can basically be accessed from anywhere. So most users in town hall use that.
And just, I got a couple more questions, then we'll get to the budget. So how does Millis's IT compare to other towns that are out there? You know, you go to the Apple Store, you get a new phone, and you realize how outdated your stuff is sometimes. Are we right in line with others, or are we ahead of the curve? Or, you know, technology is happening so quickly, as you know. How do we keep pace with it is my question.
Right. So currently Millis, I would say, is close to average to the others. I would say with me going full-time, it brings us a little bit closer.
Okay.
When I was part-time, it's very difficult with these initiatives. Things would drop through the cracks and not get handled. Or you just continue using old technology because no one is there to drive it. So prime example would be currently now with me here in Millis. I'm myself for the town side, not the school side. And then I have a managed service provider, which helps me with a networking specialist, a Microsoft specialist, and general help desk when I'm unavailable. When you look at a town like Norfolk, where I did used to work, they have a full-time IT director and then a part-time person, technician, to help with all those things. And then they pay consultants for some of those specialty type needs. So we're very similar, and they're a little bit bigger than we are. I would say about 30% in terms of the users, that more users than we currently have. And they're, again, slightly different. They're more on-prem than when we're cloud, so we're a little bit ahead in some of that.
Okay.
But again, we're pretty close to them in that stance.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Pete.
Thanks for coming, Mr. Donovan. On hardware maintenance and repairs, who does those currently?
Most of that would be like, I don't have too much of it currently, but most of it would be like, for example, printer maintenance, a printer that we own breaks, having that fixed or a maintenance kit put in or things like that, we'll generally call somebody in for. Now that I'm full-time, that may happen a little bit less, but it still would happen. Or, you know, just the maintenance kits alone can be expensive for some of the printers we have. We have check printers for Treasury, which are not cheap, and you have to keep them maintained.
I guess where I'm headed up to is that I did see that, you know, there's not much in there for hardware maintenance. And I'm just wondering if, you know, Carol Johnson's computer goes to the blue screen, and who does she call? Where does she get hardware service? And who is planning and programming for hardware refresh?
So that's a good question. So some of it is, so she's a very good example. She uses one of those machines called thin clients. So I can just swap, I have extras, so I can just swap out the thin client and she's back up and running. So I'm called for those type of things because I am physically here. We do have other issues, even with our cloud stuff, we have some issues, which we did today. And I work on it a bit, but I also call in our managed service provider, and then they help with some of those cloud fixes and adjustment. But when you talk about physical hardware, people do have laptops around the building, Zoom calls, people work from home, things like that. That's something I pay attention to. I know the age of most of them that are out there, or all of them that are out there, and would plan for when they go bad. I do also have loaners of those, so when somebody does have an issue, I can easily get them right back up and running pretty fast with a loaner. That's one of the things to utilize Microsoft services, OneDrive, SharePoint, things like that. They keep everything pretty much backed up for us. Not pretty much, they keep it fully backed up. So when you do have an issue, you log into a loaner. There's a couple, you know, minor setup type things we do, and I could have you running in 15 minutes.
But is somebody planning for town employees, say, refresh of laptops? I assume Mr. Gazinski has a laptop.
He does
and-
not.
Okay. But I was.
Carol does,
Bonus.
though, yes.
Trying to get him to do more, you know, he work from home, right? I'm sure he would appreciate that.
He never leaves, so he doesn't have to use one.
Exactly.
But yes, so on those type of things, you know, currently I don't have a plan for every so many years they get replaced. That is one of the confusing things that I am looking into and working on. For example, Carol would be a perfect example of that. She has a laptop that she only uses at home or for Zoom, so it doesn't get updated all the time. She has some issues with it. Age of it is probably fine, but then she also has a device she uses here. So she has 2 separate devices that she uses to do that part of it. So I don't have a current plan in terms of refresh. We also don't have a huge amount of that. Specifically in this building, we probably have about 10 laptops out there, maybe 12. And then you have some of the other buildings, DPW uses a couple out in their buildings. So there's no actual plan yet, but that is something to be worked on. Some of them are coming up on end of life.
Looking at the, if I may,
Go ahead.
sir, appreciate it. Looking at the budget, there's a line on there for
Yeah.
special IT projects and consulting,
Yes,
and it went up to $40,000 in 2024, and it was
Yep.
probably the biggest portion of the increase to the IT budget, which again, I'm not calling into question that, I understand you're full-time, but if that's a special project, was that intended to be a short-term project, or was that intended to be, do you know what it is, and was it intended to be part of an operating budget?
so my understanding, that it hasn't increased at all. In the years that I've been here, the 3 years, I believe it stayed at the 40,000 the whole time. I'd have to, usage may have changed, but not in terms of budget asks for it. It wasn't really getting used before I was full-time due to projects not being completed or assigned. So like Carol, maybe?
And I can add to that.
The history.
Carol
do.
Johnston, Finance Director. So we had a standing $40,000 project in IT to help us with our AP, some of the things that we want to do to progress in the department. We don't start some of the projects because we watch all of the general fund budgets. And in prior years, we've had to put projects off in order to balance the budget. So that is really, we've watched it and not allowed some of our projects to move forward, hoping the next year we can move them forward because we pull from, when we do our balancing of the budget at the end of the year, that's one of the places that we end up holding on and pulling from.
May I attempt to interpret that? You didn't execute the $40,000 that was approved in '24 because it got transferred, interdepartmental transfer.
Exactly.
After May. You put it back in the budget.
Right.
For 2025 in hopes that you'll do it in the
Exactly.
coming fiscal year.
Exactly.
Okay. The reason that I'm asking is because, in my mind, if something is in the budget as an interim, a special project, I mean, yeah, of course it will get discussed and reviewed every year, but if the intent is for it to be a project implies that it's got a finite start and end. If it's an operating budget item, maybe I'm just taking issue with the fact that it's a special IT project.
So that could be
Well-
my fault, so I changed the name in the budget of it. It used to be called consulting.
Right.
So I changed it to special projects, partially because I wasn't sure necessarily what I could use it for. So one of the projects we're working on this year is with the water and sewer and the, what's it called, a stormwater building. That is currently on a spreadsheet. And we have to pay a consultant every year to take it from a spreadsheet and basically make it a bill. So this is gonna put it into our financial software where it should be anyway. So that project, part of this 40,000, this money, will be used for that project. That project does specifically have a beginning and an end, of basically you start the project, and when it's a bill, it's the end of it, but that's only one of those projects, and that's where I kind of wanted to change it to be away from just consulting and to be IT special projects and consulting, because then next year it can be used for another specific projects. We just came up with another one today while we we're on the phone consulting about this project, and some of this stuff will create efficiencies, create savings for other departments maybe, but a lot of it is just creating efficiencies. We have a lot of spreadsheets and things around the different departments, and they're using those to control things. And this will kind of allow us to do that. One of the other things that was used, and part of the reason I felt the need to change it to projects or special projects, is something like this in this room as well, of getting this room better and get the TV off of a rickety table and getting them positioned properly in the ceiling and set up for more long-term use. that specific is one project, but that's why, to me, that is more of an overall arching projects type thing.
So we have many projects,
I appreciate that explanation.
and we're just trying to knock away at
I
them.
actually have a follow-up question on that. That's a good point. Have you worked with Jonathan Berry on the capital planning committee at all?
No.
Would those projects be considered capital planning items?
No, because each project wouldn't be large enough to be
Okay.
considered that. So it would be still, like, it might be 10,000 for this project, but if we have it in the budget, then we could say, okay, we can move forward with this one
Yep.
this year, or we have to hold again.
And
Right.
going back to hardware, that would fall in the same category because of the price tag on those items? Like if hardware is below 10,000, it falls on the operating budget versus
Right, if
capital?
he had it in his, I think it's around, it used to be $8,000 to $10,000
like-
in the
Yeah,
budget.
okay.
And so that would be replacement of a laptop, replacement
I
of a
just wanted to
printer.
find the scope of what we were
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, small dollar items.
So that being said, just talking about special projects, things like that, one of my goals is to go through and as we do some of these, learn about what other projects there are. For example, the one that came up today when we were talking about this first project, and kind of putting dollar numbers to them. Not saying we have to do this right now, putting dollar numbers to them and getting through all them and having, maybe they can be combined and gotten a grant for. Things like that, so being able, and maybe even having some of the grants that I apply for, like the fiber grant requires us to put in so much money for that grant as well, and being able to have some money to be able to put towards that special project. I think my fiber grant is 150,000 and I have to put up 12. So, well worth it, and, the return on investment is very good with something like that.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead,
If I
thank you.
might, please, thank
Yep.
you. There was some mention that your, quote, "special projects" pertain to perhaps stormwater?
Yes.
Water and sewer. Now, wouldn't that be refunded through the chair from the enterprise funds? Okay, so then that money comes back in, and but we just heard an exactly from, I should have asked you to stay up there. So I'm just wondering, you're using that money, but then it's coming back in, so just
That I
want to
don't
make
know
sure that
anything
it
about.
shows someplace that that money's being reimbursed, Mr. Chair. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I think the finance director may want to embellish it.
So the clarification on that is, if a project is water-based, the charges would go to water. If it's sewer-based, it would go to sewer, stormwater would go to stormwater. The projects in the general fund would just be general fund projects.
So noted, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Go ahead, Mike.
A question and a comment. A lot of us will be traveling this summer. Do you geofence our access outside of the country?
Outside of the country, yes.
So we should know, is there protocols that we can get in touch with you so we can access things? or-
There's no current protocols, but yeah, you can reach out to me and let me know. And I did for Pete Germain when he was traveling recently
You can
as
open
well.
a door.
Yeah, he emailed me from his personal account and said, hey, I can't get in. So I opened him up. So yes, and then when he came back, I closed it back up for him as well. So yes, you can notify me and I can take care of that.
Comment, I mean, I've worked with a lot of IT directors, a lot of IT managers over my career, and you've done a pretty good job. It's not an easy job. I know you started out part-time, you're full-time. Probably one of the most important jobs in a community these days because of, the cyber threats that we face and the fact that our town could be shut down in a minute if we don't take good care of protecting ourselves. So thank you for all your work. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
I just have one last question on the budget on the software maintenance going from 80K to 126K to 157K. Is that all migration to the cloud, or is that a combination of price increases?
I don't know if I have the previous.
Keep going. Yeah, right there.
I can't, I don't know off the top of my head what
Okay.
those increases were.
Okay.
I know a lot of software is in the IT budget. For
Okay.
example, the Munis software, that is currently an IT base because everyone uses it basically.
Okay.
Some of the GIS mapping is also in the IT budget.
Okay.
So a lot of these are not directly IT software packages. There are other department software packages that come out of IT. Some of it, again, I can't relate necessarily to the previous years, but from the last year to this year, there's some software increases from, say, Microsoft, where they, a lot of people started updating because they're doing all the Zoom stuff and everything since pandemic. Software prices have increased. We've also added Zoom in there as well, Zoom accounts for the different boards, things like that. Not huge money, but it does add up.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Jody.
can you explain the difference between software maintenance versus annual license fees?
A little bit. I'm a little confused on that myself a
Okay.
little bit. Some of it does overlap.
Okay,
So software, I would think would be more of like the Munis things that we're using all the time. Maintenance fees are software we purchase and then you own it and you don't have to do the fees on it, but you generally do to updates and things like that. I am a little confused as to what's in what bucket.
okay,
But this is, again, my first year doing from full-time, so it's stuff I started looking into, of trying to move it around. Because part of it was going from previous of having physical on-prem equipment to then cloud stuff. You went from having a physical cost to now a software cost. So there's changes of where those things need to be. And I think that it does need to be reviewed and categorized a little bit better.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No? Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate all your work, and we use it every day.
I appreciate it.
While we're waiting for Lisa, why don't we skip in the agenda here and approve some minutes and take care of some other things, if that's okay with everybody?
Sure.
You're the boss.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Jody.
I move that we approve the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting of March 6th.
Seconded?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the FinCom meeting minutes from March 6, 2024 at 7 PM. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Those not in favor? Passes unanimously. Deirdre, you probably know this, but Jen is not here, and Pete Underhill is not here.
Yes, I have that.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Yep. Moving along, go ahead. Yeah, I'm going to. Just going down the list here, approving minutes, I'll share some liaison updates regarding the Capital Planning Committee. Just bear with me, actually. I gotta find the email.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
while you look for that, I can give a quick update on the MBTA 3A committee.
Please do.
Okay. So last week, the MBTA 3A Advisory Committee, which is dealing with the zoning to be in compliance with state law, decided that we would not put an article on the Maytown meeting warrant, that it's not ready yet. We have a lot of work to do with the planning board and residents
Okay.
to make sure that what we have is something that makes sense. It's just, there's too many pieces that are still in motion on that. So we will be working diligently over the next few months to have it ready for the November town meeting. We do have a deadline to have something in place by the end of this year. So, if we don't, that is also a question of, what's the stick that the state will beat us with. We don't yet know that, other than saying that they're going to pull funding, discretionary funding.
Yep.
And potentially file a lawsuit like they did in Milton. So there's a lot of things in flux. We feel like there's still a lot of unknowns. And we just have a lot of work to do within the community so that we understand what we're being asked to do and what are the consequences if we don't pass something. So that's where we are. And we had the planning board meeting with the planning board last night. So that should be available somewhere.
Okay. Thank you, Jody. Go ahead, Mike.
So basically, you have to locate someplace, if I get it right, you have to locate someplace within the town where these developments could be built. Is that correct? It's simplifying it?
Where multifamily housing could be built by right.
Okay, but, well, yeah, I mean, they can build it, we just have to locate it, right?
We have to create a district,
Yes.
according to the bylaws, of where housing could be built, multifamily housing.
And right now, the question is where that location would be?
Yes, we have the requirements of the state. We have our desires as a town through public outreach that people don't want giant apartment, like 3 giant apartment buildings in downtown Millis. You know, that was clearly stated in our public outreach that that's not what folks want. So we're looking at height maximums of 3 stories. That means it has to spread out further. So you have to have more parcels that are zoned for that if you're not doing, you know, multi-story. So there's a formula that the state has. As we remove parcels, we have to add parcels elsewhere, and so the maps are constantly changing based on public input and input from the committee. We as a committee still have to meet and go over what was recently sent to us from the consultants, MAPC, because we just received those last week and we haven't had a chance to meet over them other than informally saying, well, that's not really what we wanted. So it's not even partially baked yet, so we're getting there.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update, thank you. Let me just talk about the capital planning committee, and then we can move to town clerk. So the capital planning committee, there are 8 items that are under review right now. We start tomorrow, actually. There is a server replacement with the school for $65,000. There's replace switches in technology at the school for $70,000. Fire has a replacement of car number 2 for $85,000. Library has building maintenance, exterior maintenance for $35,000. Town Buildings is requesting an aerial boom lift for maintenance and work, which is $52,923. School is requesting a skid steer to maintain the grounds and the property of the school area. That is $67,854. It is. The DPW is requesting safety equipment such as cones, blockades, Jersey barriers, things like that for $40,000. And fire has a portable radios hold for $26,232. They're applying for a grant. They don't know the details yet of getting that, but all those combined come up to about $442,000. So those are the items that we're reviewing right now, and as we march forward, we'll provide our recommendations to the select board, and then Jonathan Berry will be in here, I believe, early April. Questions, comments?
Not
All
yet.
good? Okay, so with that, Lisa, if you want to join us?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, please, and please speak into the mic, as we've been reminded, so thank you.
I was looking online and I didn't see this spreadsheet. Did you guys get it?
Was it in the, this one?
Okay. Is that you? Passed out 2 other things. One's about some info on the salary increase, and one is an explanation of the census and the street list.
So if we're gonna, should we break this down into town clerk versus board of registrars versus elections? Okay, and what are we starting with then?
Well, can I just hand out everything and then I
Yeah.
can sit?
Sure.
I know it does. I hope that isn't any indication.
Nicole had that one last night. Nicole had that one last night. She just stood up and was like, "Gang."
Thank
Partially in response to some of the questions. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Full disclosure, those were my questions that I submitted.
I'm shocked by that.
All right. What would you like to do first?
Your call, go with whatever you want.
Well, we'll go in order of your questions. How's that? Do elections.
Okay.
We just had one, by the way. Heather. I'm Lisa Harden, the Millis Town Clerk. What did I do with my thing here? Here it is.
While you're looking, or go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. So the main purpose of the Elections Department is to run elections. There's state and local elections. We have staff, plus this also covers town meetings. And we assist with setup and takedown of equipment and supplies in the town hall and at the town meeting at the high school. And early voting in room 130. So for this fiscal year '25, we'll have the state primary September 3rd, which is the day after Labor Day. The state presidential election on November 5th, the annual town election on next May 12th, and 2 town meetings, which currently the November one is the day before the presidential election. We've put in a request that if at all possible, could that date be changed? Because it's very difficult for us in terms of the people we have working, myself included, to
Yep.
do, a late meeting and then be here at 5 the next day.
All the logistics,
Yeah.
yep.
So if
understood.
it's possible, and also I know some of the seniors or parents or whoever have said that maybe sometimes we could have it a different day or a Saturday or something. So that's, just putting that out there. It's nothing that you have to decide tonight. And then the spring annual town meeting, which is on May 5th. And then occasionally there are special elections, like we just had the 2 elections last October for the Tri-County.
I don't, regarding the elections, I don't
Yep.
have,
What do you?
sorry. Just to ask one of the questions, is there
Yep.
any way to get voting to be online at all?
Well, the problem with that is fraud,
Of course,
cyber attacks.
yeah.
We need a paper trail. It's state law that we have it, an actual election. And privacy, you can't have a ballot attached to a name.
Yeah,
So if you have all these names of people who voted and then all these random ballots,
gotcha.
it's very difficult to do. I would say no.
Yep.
It's probably never going to happen.
Yep.
We're kind of going, some people have suggested that we even do away with voting machines, because they think we should go back to counting ballots by hand, which if they had ever participated in that, would not think that was a great idea.
That's a long process, understood.
So, and also the Unipay is a payment system to pay bills that you've received. So, like the tax bill or whatever, they usually want the bill number. If you don't have your bill number, they won't take it, even if you have your name and address. And we have been using it for dog licensing, but it's a blank form that people fill out. So it's not possible really to
Okay, thank you.
do a ballot. And I wasn't sure what your question was about, you gave attendance at this
I don't
town
think-
meetings.
I think that was just my fingers going on the keyboard.
Well, anyway.
There was no question there. I
did-
apologize.
I can address it to some extent, that town meetings by state law have to be held in person.
Yep.
It's a meeting.
Yeah,
There's no absentee voting, which we often get a request to vote absentee. The point is for residents to assemble together, hear information and opinions expressed by town officers and other residents, and then vote on the various issues presented. And that's been the process here in New England since the 1600s, and it's highly unlikely it will change in our lifetime. Could, you never know. I don't know. So the budget is sort of determined by the number of events and the amount of staff. And I did give you a sheet that addressed, it was addressing my request for above-level service for my own position, but it does go into some detail about elections and how they've changed.
okay, we can cover that under
We
the
can
town
cover
clerk.
that later, but
Yeah.
elections are taking way more time than they used to.
Okay, go ahead, Pete.
If I may, am I safe to assume that the schedule of events or the number and type of events proposed in FY '25 budget are similar to the FY '21 budget?
Let's see, 21.
4 years ago,
Right.
primary, presidential, town meetings, local elections?
Yes, because that was the year they had the presidential, yes. So there's a state primary, presidential,
I just want to make sure
and the
that's a
town, yeah.
safe assumption, because
Yep.
the reason I ask is, I would just like to understand why the budget, the total budget in FY '21 was $30,000 for elections, and it's proposed to be $86,000. And I can see where the lines change between one and the other, primarily in wages. But if you could just help me understand that, why it more than doubles, it actually more than triples.
Well, the vote,
Close to triple.
the Votes Act went into effect during COVID, and I honestly can't remember exactly what day that happened, but there's early voting for a week now before primaries and 2 weeks before the presidential. And there's, since '21, the state, I think it was 2 years ago they started, they send out postcards to everyone saying, hey, do you want to vote by mail? And we processed over 1,000 of those this year. And that was just for the primary, and they're going to send them out again in July or August to anybody who didn't request to vote by mail yet. So if any of you voted in person and didn't return your postcard, you're going to get another one. And so we'll get more. So in the past, we had, maybe for a presidential, a maximum of maybe 300 people would vote by mail. At the town election, maybe 30 or less. And now it's in the thousands that we're doing vote by mail.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Just, out of the numerous are mailed, how many are returned, Madam Chair?
Well, the state mails them to every voter, and so far, we got back about 1,000
You've got back.
out of 7,000 voters.
Mr.
But we'll get, a lot of people don't vote in the primary, especially unenrolleds.
But they were mailed a ballot, maybe.
No.
Oh, they
Well,
were
unless
They
they
requested
gave us some
requested
other
it, but did not return.
request.
Yeah.
Yes, we did mail out a lot of ballots that never got returned. Or the people came in and said, oh, I decided to vote in person. Here's the ballot you mailed me. So I understand why the state's doing it. They're trying to encourage people to vote. And it probably will encourage people to vote. The thing we're kind of concerned about is the town election, because the 1,000 people who already returned their thing, they checked off all elections this year. So they're going to expect a town election ballot also. And we've never mailed out 1,000 ballots on a town election
Right.
before.
Hang on, Jody's next.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as I recall, at the last presidential election, there was a request for a reserve fund transfer because the costs were over what had been budgeted. When we look at the actual numbers here, does that reflect any transfers that were out of the reserves, or is that just what was in the budget for that year?
I don't actually know. I don't have anything to do with the numbers from before.
I'm looking a little bit past you as to the queen of all numbers here.
So on the budget, those are all actuals. So that's what it actually cost. Now, in '21, we may have gotten a lot more of grant money to pay for it, because we did get a lot of COVID money during that time.
Right.
So it wouldn't be reflected in the numbers there because it was grant money, so it would fall under the grant. This is what just came out of the general fund. So I know that there has been an increase of, they didn't ever have early voting before, now they
Right.
have that. They didn't have mail-in. You could always get mail-in, but you really had to have a big excuse. It wasn't like now, if you want it, you can have it.
Right.
So I can see that there has been a big uptick in the elections office and having to deal with the different things. So there will be more than likely some additional grant money that will come in, but it's not available yet for them, so we have to put it in the budget.
Yeah. Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just recall there being a lot more expenses, so remembering that there were grant funds that were available for that makes sense. Not that the numbers have necessarily tripled in the past
Right.
few years.
Right.
They were higher, but they were covered by other funds.
Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pete, you still have a question?
I have two questions.
Go ahead.
One, that discussion brings up a question in the sense that if there's a requirement, there's a requirement. We budget expenses and costs regardless of where the funds come from. So if it costs $80,000 to do an election in FY '21, it should be reflected. And if there are grants that come into the general fund, that's on a separate line altogether from this budget. And I'm not sure why we wouldn't reflect the actual costs. Not the actual expenditures, because we just talked about in IT department where we had $40,000 budgeted, but we didn't execute it, and we're showing that it did execute. So we can't have it both ways. We have to show if something was budgeted, it needs to be budgeted. If something is an executed cost, then, we just have to be consistent.
Right, so we are being consistent, because what you're seeing here is what comes out of the general fund. So if those are actual costs, those aren't what was budgeted in '21, that's actual costs. So you have actual costs for 20, 21, 22, 23, you have the budget cost for '24, that was the approved budget. And then '25 is what the departments are requesting. And then that's in the green column, and then, of course, you'll see the blue column, which is what the town administrator gets put forward at the budget. But for right now, this is just general fund. Any of those other funds are special funds. If you wanted, Lisa could probably get you that information of what did it truly cost for the elections, what was paid out of this fund, what was paid out of that, and what actually came out of the general fund. But as far as actual costs, those are what came out of the general fund for that period of time. Okay?
You're
And
welcome.
Secondly,
Go ahead.
Dave,
Yep.
I think I have a grasp, and I appreciate the extra hours required for early voting. Could you describe for us, so we have a better understanding of what it entails for having mail-in ballots? What do you do? You collect them, you sequester them? You-
Yep, I have, I wrote it out
Thank you.
in this, it's under the town clerk salary increase, but it describes, this particular thing is about early voting. So it's required for all state, federal, and local elections, not early voting by mail. Not necessarily in person. We don't have early voting in person for local elections. Starts 45 days before the election. The postcards have been mailed out by the state before that. They're entered into the, we have to enter them into the state system. We have 2 state computers in our office that are connected to the Secretary of State's office and the, what's called the VRIS, Voter Registry Information System. So we enter all applications and postcards, and then once we get the ballots in, which is later than 45 days, usually, but we're required to send out 45 days ahead ballots to anybody overseas, but we do that via email. So the physical ballots, once they're received, we have to stuff them in envelopes with a the interior return brown envelope that people are supposed to sign after they put their ballot in it, and a white envelope that's addressed to the town clerk's office that has postage paid, which is paid by the state. And the state will pay for any postage back to us, but the town has to pay for mailing them out. And I think it's like $1.82, that's my understanding, because it's so many pieces of paper.
Does that answer
so
your question, Pete?
We stuff them, label them, enter them into the state computer, reconcile them, the 2 lists, make sure that we're sending particularly for a primary, we're sending the correct ballot to the correct person. And in the state primary and the November election and the town election, it's by, not the town election. It's by precinct, because we're a split town and we have a representative for precinct 2 and 3 and a different one for precinct 1, so we have to make sure that those ballots get to the right people. And then we mail them out, and then once the ballots are returned, either through the mail or through the ballot box out back, then we have to open the outer envelope, determine if they signed it. If they didn't sign it, we either have to mail them a new one or call them if we haven't, or email them. Some people, we have phone numbers and email addresses, and ask them to come in and sign. And in this recent one, there were a couple that came in like over the weekend or on Monday, and there wasn't, I went out to a couple people's houses because somebody had just come home from surgery. That's why she'd asked for the absentee ballot. She couldn't get out, so I went to her house to get her signature. There's just a few like that, maybe 5.
Just to jump ahead, you had in your regular material, the duplication of driver's license registration.
Okay.
Is that an issue or not?
It's not an issue, but it takes a lot of time.
Okay.
Because instead of, I registered to vote 40 years ago. Then, whenever I renew my license, they automatically now send a voter registration to the town. If there's any other interaction with the registry, like you register another car, or, I don't know, you go and do something, change your name, whatever, they send us another voter registration. So
Yep.
we have to compare that to what we already have.
Yep.
Sometimes people are changing their party, or they change their middle name, or they do something, or they add a phone number. So we have to update what we have. And so sometimes we can reject it as a total duplicate.
Yep.
And sometimes we have to accept it with the changes.
Gotcha,
So-
thank you. That might be a good, unless anyone has any specifics regarding elections, maybe we can spill over to the Board of Registrars then.
Sure.
So the only, the main area here is just the annual census.
Annual census, which again cannot be done online because everybody's census is different.
Okay.
And it has private information on it.
Sure,
And Unipay is just for paying bills. And I don't know, well, state law also, where is it? State law, which you have here. Making of lists by registrars or boards. The state of Massachusetts, as far as I can tell, is the only state in the nation that conducts a mandatory annual municipal census from every city and town. And, let's see. In January or February, we're supposed to visit or communicate with the residents of every building, and after diligent inquiry, make a list, a true list, containing as nearly as we can tell the name, date of birth, occupation, veteran status, nationality, if not a citizen, and residence on January 1st of that year and the preceding year. So it used to be done by the police department. They would go out and visit every house, but that was early on in Millis history.
In the 1700s.
yeah,
And then it got changed to where we could do it by mail.
okay,
And the mailing envelope, you need to have to say this, this is required to keep you on the voter list. Please respond. And we also use it, at the bottom, there's a dog registration form to remind people about registering their dog.
I might go online for e-permitting maybe.
The dog, we can go online. The only part of it that's not online is if we need a new rabies certificate,
Yeah,
in which case you can, we are more accepting of people taking photographs. They can return their census online by taking a photograph or scanning it and sending it to us, as long as it has their signature on it. And the dog licensing also, they can send us a photo of their rabies, and all the vets around here send us to the town clerk's office
Yep.
any dogs that they've given rabies to. So we have a pretty good idea of what dogs are here, but there are people who have dogs who never take them to the vet, or take them to some vet that's nowhere around here, another state maybe.
yeah,
And so we're pretty sure that we have probably 95% of the dogs.
it's great.
Yeah.
I'm kind of bleeding over to the town clerk position with the dog license conversation, but you have a new dog software system.
Yes.
Is there any thought of increasing the dog license fees?
Well, the point of the dog license is really a public health thing. It's to make sure that all the dogs actually have rabies. It's not to penalize anybody. We don't want to discourage anybody from getting a dog license because of the cost.
Yep,
They're kind of in line with towns around here. And it covers the cost of the license, the postage, and some staff time.
So it
I mean,
covers the majority of the
granted,
cost.
It doesn't
Okay.
it doesn't cover everything.
Okay.
But it's not supposed to be pulling in revenue for the town. That's not the point of that
Okay.
particular thing.
understood. So with that, unless there's any questions, why don't we springboard into the town clerk material?
Oh, wait a minute. How about the question, percent of households that do not complete the annual census?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you real quick? Is Deirdre still on?
Oh, that's a good question.
No.
I'll send her a text.
I can text her if you want,
Yeah, that'd be great. Go ahead.
Probably, maybe 20% don't respond to the actual census, but we can catch some of them when they come in for a dog license or voting. I don't know if this is ever going to be possible. It would be nice if the town had some kind of a central resident listing that, so, because
Yeah.
I know some other departments also ask for phone numbers and emails. And there's also the 911 thing, which I don't know if, or not that, the email blast thing.
Reverse 911.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's, privacy concerns with that or whatever, but the town, the tax collector often comes to us to ask for a phone number if they don't already have one, but we've never asked them if they have one, so.
Understood.
But it would be nice, I don't know if the IT department at some point could do something like that?
It's evolving as we've seen over the
Yep.
last few years, so it might happen in the future.
And if, for not responding, the penalty is voters are made inactive after 2 years of not filing a census, which means when they do come in to vote, they have to show us an ID and sign an affidavit that they've lived here.
Gotcha.
And they can be removed after 4 years if we've never heard from them in any way.
Okay, any other census questions or? Okay, if you're comfortable, we can move on to town clerk material.
Let's see, what's this? I think we sort of went over the dog license info.
Yeah, we
Yep.
did.
So why don't you go
So
ahead
why
and?
should I be 40 hours a week?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. I'm the head of a department that's open full-time. I have full-time staff. Every other department in town has a full-time department head. It's very difficult for me to supervise staff when I can't be here all the time. Every other town in Massachusetts has a town clerk that at least has the number of hours that the office is open. So like out in the Berkshires, some of them are only open 10 hours a week, and maybe they work 10 hours a week. But all the ones around here are 35 to 40 hours because they're open that many hours. It's been denied in prior years. I've been asking for, I don't know, probably 7 years now. Because some of the members of the select board think it should be appointed. Just as an example, because I went yesterday and talked to the town clerk in Holliston and Norfolk, who are both full-time elected. They don't seem to, their towns don't have any problem paying them for a full-time job. And they also have staff. I kind of wonder why the town of Millis is behind the 8 ball here.
Okay.
Because it's not a good way to run a department. It just doesn't work. It makes for a toxic workplace because my staff feels like they're in charge, not me. And they often, we have difficulties sometimes. Do you need more than that? I have, the explanation in my above-level service requests, and actually, that's kind of a misnomer. I feel like I'm not keeping up. It's not really level service. We're trying to get to level service from what we had 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
I will, if I can't get any more hours or money, I will have to drop the records access officer, which was kind of dumped on me.
Okay.
All the other town clerks who do it are full-time. I'm not here every day. I can't check my email every day.
Right,
I can't, it's not good for the town
right.
to have somebody who's not here full-time be the records access officer. There are, Karen and Mike are also records access officers. They don't want to do it because they have too much to do. But they also have, they're here full-time. So if you can't make me full-time, you're going to have to hire somebody else to do it. Or give it to somebody else who's here full-time.
Such as Kathy or Sue?
Excuse me?
Such as Kathy or Sue?
No, they don't have time.
They don't
They-
have time, okay,
They don't have time to do what they're supposed to be doing now.
okay.
And some of the requests are for confidential information, which really should be some kind of department head.
So how, if I may, so how come you've asked for this for many years in advance and it's never been changed?
I don't know, why? You know, I ask and I get denied.
Okay,
The only reason I'm given is that the select board wants to appoint the person.
yeah.
So,
So it'd be a
I
structural
didn't-
change if things, if
right,
it was an
I mean,
appointed
I'm in
position.
charge of elections. I'm
Yeah.
not really in favor of taking away from the citizens of the town an elected position.
Yep,
Because it's already a very minimal number of people that they even get to elect, and we're trying to keep them interested in town government.
sure,
So I've been pushing back on that. They did try to do a warrant article twice to change it to appointed, and it was turned down by the citizens at town meeting. However, this year, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. It's going to be the same people on the Board of Selectmen for several years to come. And so I made an offer that I would consider being appointed, but it has to be done before July 1st, which means it has to be arranged before town meeting in order to get some money for it. We haven't really had a discussion yet.
okay,
The message was sort of
okay,
said wrong to them, so they turned it down, but I said that I was interested in discussing with them being appointed, and there's still a couple weeks left. Maybe something will happen. I mean, it
Okay.
can go up until, you know, the day of town meeting,
sure,
because it would, I mean, realistically, it could just be changing the line item for town clerk's salaries to begin. You know, if a warrant article is required to change an elected position to appointed, it could, if, it's not going to get done in this May, but it could get done in November and be retroactive to July 1st or something. I mean, anything's possible.
good question.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Joyce.
You said you can't answer his question. Who can answer his question about you becoming full-time?
The question was why it hasn't been approved.
Right, why it hasn't been
Well, the only-
approved, but who could answer? You said you really can't answer and you're summating it. Is there, who would be able to answer that?
Well, the only answer I've been given is that they just keep saying, like, when I went to the select board and presented my budget, Craig just started out and said, well, we have a difference of opinion, I think she should be appointed, and that was kind of the end of the discussion.
So is it something,
Select board.
so the select board would make that decision, but is that something that would have to be on their agenda so that you could present an argument? I mean, is that something that you?
Well, it can't really be done at a public meeting. I think I might be getting on an executive, what do they call that?
Session.
Executive session?
Executive session
Mm-hmm,
after the next meeting.
Okay. Mike, am I putting you on the spot? Do you have any idea what the process is?
Mike?
Oh, you asked me.
Did you change your name?
I'll just say at this time, you know, the town clerk's request to be considered full-time has been conveyed to the board. The board hasn't taken any formal action in regards to it. If the board was going to consider the possibility of an employment agreement of some kind with the town clerk, which would be a very complicated scenario. This is an elected position. It would involve counsel, it would involve a lot of discussions. So the board hasn't made any formal decision on it, but obviously, I think the board has made it clear up to this point that they want to go in the direction of an appointed town clerk. And, for any number of reasons, the town meeting has not decided to support that as of yet. And the board is not prepared, at least up until this point, to change the pay level radically of the position. So I don't want to speak it really beyond that for the board.
Yep.
The board, will be considering that. And I'm sure between now and town meeting, they will make some, more formal decision on that.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Well, it's been 7 years that she's been asking for this. I would think that I'm talking as just I might be out of line, but I just think the woman should get an answer one way or the other. She's been asking for this for 7 years. Each year she comes, she presents it, and she keeps getting told to me, it looks like it's getting kicked down keeps getting kicked down the street. So what can be done to expedite it so that she can get an answer one way or the other, so this gets resolved, so that she doesn't have to keep coming year after year after year after year asking to be full-time?
Well, again,
And I don't know that you can answer
speak
that.
for the
I
board
could be
this
just
year
generally speaking.
formally. I will say in years past, the board has given an answer, and the answer has been no. And obviously, there's a difference of opinion, the best way to proceed here. And again, I know that the board has received the request from the clerk to consider this approach. And between now and the town meeting, the board will make a determination on whether or not they'll support that. So I cannot answer what that answer will be.
No, I understand. I just guess I'm
formally.
just to the universe.
I will leave that to the board to verbalize that at some upcoming meeting, but that's the current status.
Thank you, Mike.
How is her position right now currently? If it's not appointed, how are you?
I'm elected,
You're
and I
elected.
have a stipend.
Okay.
And it would be possible to raise the stipend by changing the number on the, it's not complicated. But, and I have not received an answer as to how they think I'm supposed to run the office. A full-time office with full-time staff with very part-time hours. They've never addressed that. They've only said, we want to appoint you.
Pete,
So
did you have a
that-
question?
I do. Mr. Chair, probably my question is directed to Mr. Kaczynski, and that is, if the position were to be switched to an appointment, would it entail your standard hiring action, or, we're talking about a position, not a personnel change,
Right, I follow.
All I can say is generally, when an elected position is switched to an appointed position, I know historically what has happened in different towns in the Commonwealth is that until the end of that person's current elected term, they'll remain in that position. And then at the end of the term, it's really up to the appointing authority to determine whether they're going to appoint that individual or whether they're going to go out and advertise and go through a process.
So the incumbent, if the appointing authority, and my next question is who is that in this case, but if the appointing authority appoints the incumbent elected position, that is possible, that they could basically move it over until the end of the term, and then they could generally have another hiring action?
Yes, that's essentially what the process has been in most communities in the state that have gone, and this is, this is a long history, say with the position of treasurer collector in the Commonwealth. Has been a long arc of towns switching over, and that's generally how that's occurred. And I believe the similar has occurred for those towns that have switched over for town clerks from elected to appointed. Usually they work out the rest of their elected term, and then it's a determination from the designated appointing authority as to the next steps, whether that person remains in the position or whether there's an advertisement and a hiring process.
Who is the appointing authority?
Select board.
Well, that wouldn't be, it would be determined by whatever,
What do our rules say right now? Who is the,
I would be the appointing authority, the town administrator would be the appointing authority, because in the current bylaws, it says that with the exception of certain positions that are specifically outlined, that all the appointments are the town administrator, subject to ratification by the select board.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mike.
I think no matter what the sympathy or we may have toward the position, I think at this point, this is a selectman matter, select board matter. I don't think we have any authority to make any decisions on this.
we never do.
So.
Agreed. Agreed.
Town meeting vote.
I thank you very much for the information, because I think that's valuable, and your position on it. And if it comes before us, after a decision has been made by the select board to put it in a warrant or put it before us in a budget matter, then we certainly have the information necessary.
Right. Well, I have to explain the, the
Yeah,
Form 6,
Sure.
quote-unquote, above-level service.
yeah.
Good job.
Well, thank you very much. Does anyone have any more questions?
For anybody who's new, this problem started probably back in the 80s when town clerks' offices became busier, but I think it might have even started earlier because both George Ford, who came on in the 70s, and Arthur Thorne, who was here before him, had full-time jobs, so they weren't interested in having a full-time job.
Sure.
So they made the assistant the full-time
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And it's just never changed.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you very much for providing answers and providing all the material. We appreciate it.
All right, if you have other questions afterwards, I'd be happy to
Thank you.
Okay,
email answers.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, looking at the agenda here, we approved the minutes, did the CPC liaison update. Say it again?
Board and committee liaisons, I believe.
Yeah, I don't have any new information on the board and committee liaisons. We'll punt that till next meeting. Yes,
Can I ask a question about the minutes?
yes, go ahead.
Upon closer review, I seek kind of some clarity that perhaps I missed something. There's a statement, I'll read it verbatim. It says, "If the override fails, the district will need to reduce staff by 7 full-time teachers and 8 full-time paraprofessionals. Approval of the override would keep level service staff." I don't recall that specificity in terms of if the override fails, that there would be 7 full-time teachers and 8 full-time paraprofessionals.
They covered
Yeah.
that.
We did cover it.
They covered that.
Specifically.
Yes.
They did.
Because I
Yes.
recall discussion that it could be any amount, and that is a possibility, but those decisions have not been made. And my point would be that I would hate for this to be documented as that is what's going to happen if an override fails.
They did say, they did.
They did tell us that. They said 7
Yeah.
teachers and 8
As a
paraprofessionals.
possibility. I don't think that was.
So you questioned the verbiage of possibility or the numeric
Specificity.
values?
That will.
That
will,
will happen. I don't think that has been decided, that
That's what they said.
it's either override or 7 teachers, 8 paraprofessionals. I think that is an example that was given to get to the dollar figure.
As opposed to saying
Well-
it will be, it could be.
Go ahead, Deirdre.
Go ahead, Deirdre.
Yeah, I mean, I had written it down, so,
Yeah.
so could be, I guess.
Could be.
Whatever you'd like to do, but I did have that specifically written down.
Okay, so why don't we, Deirdre, if we could just review the video? And if it's different, then if it's more aligned to what Pete's saying we should change that in the minutes, correct?
I think you would have to have a motion since we voted it.
Yeah,
Move
we'd have to open it.
consider,
Right.
And then a motion to table, or you can't reopen this without revoting it, I don't think.
Yeah.
Which is why I agree.
Next,
Agreed. And we,
Mr. Chair, I suggest that we, as you said, we have Deirdre go over it, and then at the next meeting, we could review it.
so do we vote on that?
Mr. Chair,
You go ahead, Jody.
I move that we reopen the vote to approve the minutes of March 6th.
Second.
There's been a motion second to reopen the minutes of March 6th FinCom meeting. Discussion.
So at that point, if we can review the video and see if we should change the word will need to could need,
Could need.
and then we can review at our next meeting.
Does everyone follow that?
I don't think it's,
Satisfied
my
with that.
position would be, I don't think it's necessary, because we may not need to change it. So I would just say wait till the next meeting, and then I would suggest, as Jody says, open it up and make a decision at that time.
So we have discussion right now. So why don't we vote on reopening this and then review the video and then make modifications to the minutes and re-vote on this next week?
So we would, this motion would leave this open for vote.
We would leave this
For approval
open
next week.
for review to approve again.
There we go.
Does that work with everybody?
Yes.
All in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Unanimous.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that make sense, Deirdre?
It does, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry about that.
no,
know
I
know
believe
it's
you're
all
right,
right.
Deirdre.
That's
No,
okay.
no apologies necessary. Honestly, it's just a matter of, we know, if I may, Mr. Chair, we just know how, this is a very important issue, and the record on it is critical. And even though you may have written it down, and even though it may have been stated,
Yeah.
it was also stated by me and others that they will consider whole bunches of options. And then it could be admin. I mean, we talked about, there was extensive discussion as to whether they'd be admin or faculty. And they said there could be a number of things.
And to that point, full-time is in here versus full-time equivalents, which is a term the school department likes to use.
Yes.
And all that to say, no apologies necessary.
Yeah. But can I use that as a springboard to talk about the school meeting yesterday?
Yes.
So, I missed everybody, since I was the only one there.
I was in another meeting.
I'm not asking for excuses. But you can find this fiscal year budget for fiscal year 2025 budget for the schools online under the school committee. And it does go through, it's similar to last year, and it goes through the various budget cuts. I don't have the slide number here, but it's about 2/3 of the way through the presentation, talking about reducing staff by 16 to 20 full-time equivalents. At Clyde Brown, through the specials, through literacy and math support, through class sizes of the middle school, unified arts classes, literacy and math, high school increased class size, elimination of elective courses, elimination of some AP courses. So there is details being provided as we progress down this path. And besides this slide, everything else we kind of heard of when they came here last time. But I suggest everybody to review it. They know they're coming back here on April 3rd. And if we have questions between now and April 3rd, let's collect those questions and let's make sure that that we, as well as the town, can answer those questions. Any questions for me on the school committee meeting? No? Does anybody have anything else before we wrap it up? I know Kathy sent on a webinar today for our Chapter 70 funding. So if people want to do that, that's great. We have a draft of the articles as well, so start taking a look at that. And that's all I have on my list. Does Anyone have anything else?
Topics for next week? Is there,
I think it's DPW. In terms of departments?
yes, sir.
I believe it is. We're not, is that March 20th? I have it here.
It's DPW, and then I did request the CPC to address their articles, but I have not heard back from them.
Okay, perfect.
And the information we received regarding the Oak Grove renovation?
Yes.
Is that something that's going to be coming before us?
Deirdre, we request, well, that's what you requested, right, Deirdre?
That'd be part of the CPC?
Yeah.
Community preservation.
Articles 11
Or
and
not
12.
community, but,
Yeah,
Is that and the
I
renovation?
haven't heard back from Nate Maltinsky
yeah,
regarding those articles, but otherwise, it's just the DPW.
okay, go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, yes, just for clarification, the Community Preservation Commission Chair and the, well, it's Nate Maltinsky is really the central figure in all of this. And I
Yep.
did speak with him briefly
Okay.
yesterday, and he was aware of the invitation, and I believe he had it in his calendar. So hopefully he'll confirm officially very soon. But I do believe that he is all set to come in next week. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Have the selectmen or select board taken a position on this, on the renovations?
They have not. And I believe that the renovations, I think there was an initial estimate. I think they're looking at the possibility of doing this in phases because of the large cost. So, but I would defer any more particulars to Mr. Maltinsky.
So if anyone has any further questions, feel free and email me, and I'll make sure we get answers or prepare them for next week. Yeah, that'd be great. I'll take a motion.
Move to adjourn?
Second and to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Deirdre.